Okay.
Hello, welcome everybody to this edition of Menopause Conversations. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome my guest today, Natasha Owens. Hi Natasha, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Hi Amanda.
Yeah, lovely to see you. So basically, we are going to have a conversation today about primary ovarian insufficiency or primary ovarian failure. And this is something that happens to women. And it's a lot more common than you may realise. This is really like a premature start of menopause. It's when there are problems with the ovaries. But I wanted to get my next guest on because she absolutely tells her story with passion. She tells it with such openness and honesty that really it deserves to be heard on a much, much wider platform. So as part of our awareness around menopause and how it can present itself, I'm really delighted to have you on, Natasha. So can we go back to the beginning and can you tell us a little bit about your journey to this point, if you will? How did it all start?
I think it was around about, I was about 13, and I just I'd felt normal before that, and I just didn't feel me. I think I suffered with a lot of migraines, and I felt I was really sweaty all of the time, and then I'd get these uncontrollable hot flushes when I was at school, and because I hadn't started my period at that time, I just thought maybe it's part of puberty, or maybe my period might arrive, because I know everybody at school was talking about periods, but it actually just got worse and worse and worse, and it got to a point where I just thought, well, I'm still feeling strange, but I'm still not having a period. So because it was so long ago and nobody talked about, I didn't even know what menopause was back then. I didn't know. All I thought was, if you don't have a period, you can't have children, you can't have babies, and that's all I associated it, no periods, with. So because I felt so ashamed and not like everybody else, I covered it up really, really, really well, and just sort of blended in, and just, if anyone asked me about, oh, have you started your period, or there was a conversation, I remember it vividly, conversations in the changing rooms, and I just sort of blended to the back and didn't want to be part of the conversation, and that carried on well for quite a few years, really. And I think by the time I got to about age 15, age 16, I think mentally, I think it was really affecting me, because I think by then I knew something was wrong with me. And I was terribly thin as well. Honestly, if I've got pictures of me, and it's like looking at a different person, because I hadn't developed in any way at all. I mean, I look like a very small, thin little stick child. So yeah, and I think back then I wasn't in a family where I was able to talk to my mum about it. I think at age 13, 14, all I remember is her putting sanitary towels in the back of my wardrobe and her walking out of the room. But inside, I think I was screaming, ask me, just please ask me. But we weren't, I've got brothers, and it was quite a male environment, so we didn't discuss things like that at all. So I just carried on as normal. But in the back of my head, also thinking there's something drastically wrong with me. I really need to go and seek medical help. But I just think my mental health was on the floor, to be honest. And I think I just got busy. When I left school, I was busy in my career. And then I don't know if many people know a lot of my story, but I was planning on going to seek medical help. And then I actually got attacked on a night out. So that took my journey into a completely different direction. Couldn't tell anyone about not having periods, but I also didn't want to disclose to anybody what had happened to me. And then in my head, I just thought, oh, if I go to the GP now, then they'll want to examine me. And I just kept thinking that couldn't happen to me. So at that point, I was 16 years old, started an apprenticeship, didn't have a period, was struggling mentally with that, and I was also struggling mentally and physically with being attacked as well. So what I did was I just literally ploughed into my hairdressing, lived for the weekends, which I think for me it's just a way of escapism. Looking back on my life now, when I was out and whatever I was doing, whether it was substance or alcohol, I felt normal. I felt like I belonged. I was quite in a world where I wasn't thinking about no periods or what I had experienced. and I felt like I was with everyone else. So yeah, that from about 16 till about 23, I did that life. I worked all week and lived for the weekends. But that was a coping mechanism. Looking back on it now, I know why I was doing it. And it wasn't till I met my husband in Ibiza. I was out there working, and I met my husband. He was working as well, and we were friends. We didn't have a relationship that summer. He didn't know anything about me. I think I was coming home because I had to come home before the season finished, and I remember saying goodbye to him. And in the taxi on the way to the airport, I think I texted him to say, you know, I'm really going to miss you. And that's how it sort of blossomed. So I was home, and he was still in Ibiza, and he actually rang me every single day. Oh. And yeah, I know. And at that point, my mum was sort of like, because I was still living at home, I think if you think there's something between you, I think you should go out and see him. So he invited me out there at the end of the season to stay with him for 2 weeks. So I went out alone, which was massive for me, huge. And then I got there, and I think we had a couple of drinks, and I knew how I felt. I'd never felt like that before, because I had quite a few relationships before Damien, but they didn't go anywhere. When it got to the serious bit, I finished it.
Yeah.
So I knew this was different, and he's 5 years older than me, and it was just lovely. So we had a few drinks, and I actually told him everything. It just all came out, and I kept this all a secret for most of my life. And he was amazing. He didn't even question it. I think he just hugged me for hours. I mean, he was really upset, and he was really upset. And he just said, well, we'll just deal with it. You know, I'm in love with you, for you, not what you can give me sexually or as in children, as in fertility. So when we get back to the UK, we'll just work out what we're going to do, because he's Liverpool and I was Surrey. So we'll work out what we're going to do, and we'll go and seek medical help, which we did quite quickly. We did. Went to the GP. She referred us to a local hospital in Surrey. And that was awful, actually. I can't say it was positive, because it wasn't. It was awful. Looking back on it, knowing the knowledge I know now, I wouldn't have accepted the way they treated us now. I just think it was horrendous. She just did a couple of blood tests, no ultrasound scan to see if I had everything in there. It was just a couple of tests to see what my hormone level. She did explain about levels, FSH levels, and then we went back a couple of weeks later with the results, and she said, oh yes, you've got early menopause. It would have been primary ovarian insufficiency. And she said, let's take it back to when your symptoms first started. And I said, well, that would have been when I was 13 then. And she said, and there was no mention of osteoporosis or vaginal atrophy or examine me down below. There was just nothing. All she said was, we can put you on the contraceptive pill or a HRT tablet form, so I will have a monthly bleed, a withdrawal bleed every month, so it'll be like a normal period, which I did for a little while. She just put me on that. There was no follow-up appointment, no examination, no scan, and she just said, here's a form for IVF egg donation. And that was it. I didn't see anybody after that, nobody. So we were kind of sort of in this little limbo of like, no counselling, no nothing. So, but we got through it together. I don't know how we got through it, but we did. I wasn't depressed or anything. I think because I already knew all of my life. I've said this to a couple of journalists, actually, because I get asked this question all the time. How did you know you couldn't have children? I don't know. I just knew from a young age, I probably can't have children. And I don't know why, but I just knew. So I think I wasn't devastated when I finally got diagnosed at age 25, because I'd grown up knowing I probably couldn't have a child. So for me, it wasn't like, I wasn't devastated. I mean, I had a few tears with my mum, but I was okay with it. So going on that type of tablet form HRT, which they don't really give out much now.
No.
And that didn't really suit me either. I was on quite a lot. I think I was on Femiston, Conti, Climagest, all of the tablet forms. But I would bleed then for a week every couple of weeks. So for some reason that didn't suit either, and it wasn't a normal bleed really, it was clots as well. It got to the point where I had to come off it. It wasn't doing me mentally or physically any good. I've never seen anything like it. It was disgusting. We don't know why that was happening. So it wasn't till we moved up here, we adopted our 2 children, which was all great. And then at about age 30, have our intimate part of our relationship from the age of 25 to 30, so 5 years, was absolutely fine, quite normal. And then sex was a problem. And we didn't really know why. The children had just arrived. We had them a couple of months, and then intercourse was really, really painful, but really painful. And then I would tear, rip, and I would start bleeding, which was really odd.
Yes.
And then we were in and out of the GP. We did go to the GP quite early on. I mean, being with Damien, he's so supportive. I was able to have that confidence to go and have that discussion with my GP, which is great. And they just treated me for thrush for about a year. I was in and out of the doctors for a year until it got really, really bad, with quite a lot of bleeding, that I said on one occasion, no, this isn't thrush. This is something else. This is my it sounds awful, but my labia skin and my vaginal opening was like a piece of raw meat in a butcher's. That's the only way I could describe it to any lady. It was so red. It's still like that now, to be honest, but so I thankfully that GP referred me to the local hospital here, and I got a biopsy done, and I was diagnosed there and then with Lichen Planus. So that was the journey starting of Lichen Planus, which no one's really heard about. I certainly hadn't heard about it at age 30. I had to come home and research it, and there still really isn't now an awful lot of literature online about any of the lichen sclerosis or Lichen Planus diseases. So that was a bit of a blow. So that's local estrogen cream on the vulva and inside the vagina, and steroid cream. But
can I just ask you, because honestly it's just so amazing that you just speak so beautifully and with such confidence about it, and that's hats off. That's how we need women to talk about these things. So can I just bounce back just to the Lichen Planus? Do we know what that is? Is that menopause related? Is it a bacterial infection, a viral infection? What is it?
Yeah, from what my gynecologist has told me over the last couple of years, because I was estrogen, well, I didn't have any estrogen from the age of 13 to the age of 25. I wasn't producing it, so therefore it's a skin condition where the body's attacking itself. So obviously I was so starved of estrogen. It's almost like vaginal atrophy, isn't it, when you're in postmenopause, when things start drying up and getting sore because you're at the change of life. Whereas for me, I was a young woman going through it very young. So as far as I'm aware, my gynecologist seems to think I've got Lichen Planus because I was post-menopause, and I didn't have no estrogen down there. I didn't have any. I was zero.
So when we tell people what estrogen does, it plumps things up. Yeah. That's why young girls have just got the most beautiful plump skin, not a wrinkle on it. But actually then what starts to happen is a bit like at my age now with the crow's feet here, when you've got more wrinkles, you've got less moisture, but it's much more exaggerated in our vaginal tissue, isn't it? Which, we've probably got more estrogen receptors there than we have on our face. So, we don't moisturize down there on a daily basis. We pay much more attention to here. So you're absolutely right.
It goes very, very thin, the tissue. So it's like my gynecologist describes it like glass. It's like paper thin, the skin. It tears really, really easy. So your whole structure down there completely changes in menopause. And I think there's so many women that don't realise that either, that how important it is to get a local estrogen down there, whether it's on the vulva or it's Vagifem to go inside, just to give it that extra boost that it needs. So I suppose I had 5 years of what I thought I was normal, and then all of a sudden, things got way out of hand. But I think my story is slightly different with the Lichen Planus, because then it turned to erosive Lichen Planus, which it's in all mucosal membranes through my body and internally inside the vagina as well. And that's where normal Lichen Planus is just a little bit on the outside, but erosive Lichen Planus, it went to it turned into erosive Lichen Planus, so it goes ulcerated. So I've had Lichen Planus since I was 30, so 16 years, and it's never got any better. It's actually got worse, and they don't know why. They just seem to think because I was in early menopause, this is the backlash of having no estrogen for so long in my life. I mean, I'm a very high dose now, but it doesn't really seem to make an awful lot of difference to the Lichen Planus now for some reason. We don't know why.
And it's like most responses in the body, isn't it? If something goes on for a long period of time, your body makes adjustments, and often those adjustments can be irreversible, can't they? You know, it's like when you get an autoimmune condition. And if I may, just to go back, because I know so many people they'll be going, well, how, can you catch it? How does it happen? All of those sorts of things. When we talk about the incidence of primary ovarian insufficiency, POI, the statistics say 1 in 100 women will get that under the age of 40, 1 in 1,000 under 30, and 1 in 10,000 under 20. Yeah. So there's a higher prevalence than we think, and it's about, I think, 5% of the population will have that and don't know that they have it. And as you and I both know, even under normal circumstances of being menopausal at 51, the average woman will have 8 symptoms that she's not aware are all interconnected. And so you're absolutely right. Not having your estrogen has really, you're paying such a huge price, aren't you, for the fact that people didn't connect the dots on your behalf either.
Yeah, and I just think there's still not enough education. I wasn't even offered the patch till I was over 30. I was never offered a HRT patch. I mean, at the hospital I am now, I'm at the Liverpool Women's Hospital. I've been there for 10 years. They are phenomenal. It wasn't until I was there that they're offering the patch. Why don't you? Because I think because I was bleeding quite a lot on the tablet form, I actually came off HRT for a little while without looking into it. I just decided to come off it because I couldn't cope with it. Yeah, and then when I went there on one of my follow-up appointments, they were so angry with me. They said, you've got, your osteoporosis as well because you've got lack of estrogen. You can't come off it. You've got to be on it. And I said, but I can't tolerate it. I can't put up with the symptoms that it's given me. And she said, well, we've got patches, we've got gel. And she was really puzzled. And I said, but I've never been offered that before. And that was another missing link. And I just think knowledge is everything, isn't it? Knowledge is power.
It so is, and that's why your story will never lose its power, because there's always women that are slipping through the net. Why? Because menopause isn't, women's health generally is very far down on the list of priorities, isn't it? Menstrual problems, fertility problems, it's not a priority. If it was a man's issue, I bet it would be a priority. I can absolutely assure you of that. But the reality is, and we were talking about this before, if you do get a diagnosis of primary ovarian insufficiency, it doesn't stop there. I mean, because sometimes your ovaries might kick in, they might not. You might then have fertility. You might not. You might have periods. There's so much uncertainty with it. It isn't there? And so, again, is there anything that you feel could have been done differently that would help women now? What would your advice be to women now?
I just think if they can't, it sounds awful because I know there's not enough menopause clinics on the NHS around the country, and I feel privileged because where I go there is a menopause clinic, but because not everyone's got the access to the right GP, it's difficult, isn't it? I definitely think a menopause clinic would be the way forward because they've definitely got the right advice, because the GPs don't seem to have the right education at the moment. They really don't. I mean, it's things like down south, I wasn't even discussed about osteoporosis. So I was diagnosed with that at 30 up here by having a DEXA scan, which, I mean, I'm thankful I get looked after very closely with that at the moment. But people don't discuss that either. And bone health.
No.
It's so important, isn't it?
It is, but it is. And if I tell you, I mean, don't get me started. I mean, I felt completely failed by my GP practice, but I live in rural Devon, I don't have any choices. We don't have a single menopause clinic in the whole of Devon. We don't even have one in Cornwall. So I have to travel to the Midlands to get seen by a menopause clinic, which I have to pay for privately. You know, it's so unfair is the word. It's so unfair, and it's making women pay the penalty for being a woman, you know, and it's just not on. But we must work together, ladies, and fight for one another, because it's our duty really to fight for one another and to help one another out. So if you see petitions, sign them. Even if it's not in your area, please sign them, because it makes a massive difference to all of us. Okay, so when you think about your life now, and you do, you know, you're just such a lovely person and you give your time so generously. I mean, you are super powerful on social media, and I know that can be a you know, a help and a burden in equal breath. I mean, how have you found it being on social media and women reaching out to you?
Yeah, I think at the beginning I was completely overwhelmed by it all, and I don't know why. I thought at the beginning I wasn't worthy of having a platform, because my page actually was a personal account, which I decided a year ago to turn it into a menopause awareness, and that's thanks to Diane Danty Dink, really, and Jane, my menopausal vagina, who unfortunately isn't active on her account anymore. And thanks to those ladies, I was able to find my voice, and thought, actually, I am able to talk about it now, and I am able to offer support to other ladies. So now I feel amazing about it all. Although at times I think, oh, I feel like I'm repeating myself. I think that's the only thing with social media, isn't it? You're trying to think all the time of what to post or what haven't you posted. But I think sometimes repeat is good, because not everybody's going to go back on your page and read things anyway, although there might be new followers that aren't going to scroll right down. So I've learned so much knowledge about menopause since being on social media. Instagram's been phenomenal. So
yeah, and that's where I found you. So tell people what your handle is on Instagram. What is it?
do you know what?
I can't remember. Don't worry, we'll put it in the notes. I'm so glad you didn't ask me that question. But we'll put it in the notes. It's Natasha, and then there's some numbers, isn't there?
Just Natasha Owens. And do you know what? I get the numbers muddled. I'm going to try and change it so it's my date of birth. So it's
yeah. Well, that's so brilliant. I love that. So listen, you'll spot Natasha, because your page is lovely, and you really do just let people know how you feel. And you know, sometimes I think people are guilty of glamorizing situations or not being authentic about them, but that isn't you at all. You let people know when you're having a bad day, and you reach out, and you remove yourself. And I think that's really, really important, because it's not about turning up in a position of perfection. You know, we're all struggling in one way or another, if not with our mental health, with our physical health, and you know, we're all just doing the best we can. And so long may you continue to do that, because you're doing an absolute brilliant job. So when we think about what needs to change, what's your hope for women going forward, either with POI, Lichen Planus? What do you hope for women?
That every woman can find access in her local GP practice with someone that's got a little bit of expertise within menopause. I mean, there just isn't enough education within our GP practices, and it's unbelievable, actually, isn't it? I mean, I've got friends as well that are a little bit older than me. One's got MS, she's in her 60s, she's just managed to get estrogen, which is amazing, on a gel. And my other friends have breast cancer, and she's struggling to get any sort of estrogen, and she's 50. So if the average Joe could access the right support in their local GP practice, I'd wish that for everybody, really, because it would be so much easier. And don't even get me on about the shortages at the moment, though. Oh my goodness, it's just what's going on.
And there do seem to be some regular culprits with that. You know, I'm on Sandrina and Utrogestan, touch wood, hasn't been any problems, but there've been really significant problems throughout the pandemic, haven't they? I mean, what do you know about that that you can share with us?
Every time I try to find out, there doesn't seem to be a manufacturing issue apparently with Bessins. So you then got to think, is it the local suppliers? Is it the individual chemists? I mean, I'm quite lucky. I'm with Boots. I changed to Boots because they seem to be they have a bigger supplier. My local Lloyds were useless. Every time I went there, oh no, we can't get that, and I was just fobbed off. Whereas Boots, I've got such a good relationship with the pharmacist. It's a man as well, and he reserves them for me. I'm on Estradot and gel, and as soon as I ring up, he goes, "They're on reserve. We've got them for you."
Brilliant.
You
well,
know,
one of the reasons why, we're almost a little bit the product of our own success a little bit, in that because we're raising the noise around menopause and HRT, the demand has gone up. So of course, you know, there are issues. My husband works in pharmaceuticals, you know, trying to get raw ingredients, you know, in the current state of the world that we're living in, it's not always easy. And so, you know, you then get more people using a product. There is a slight issue between supply and demand, but that said, you're right, we should have the infrastructure. Women cannot be without their hormones. If this was happening to diabetics, there'd be absolute uproar, wouldn't there? There would be uproar.
Even to change to another brand is a massive issue at the GP practice. It's ridiculous.
It is. Oh, and that, you see that noise there, that'll be someone on Instagram getting hold of Natasha, because she's just permanently on. She's on alert. She's like, that's another follower coming in. And the reality is, you know, they do need to be better, because it's actually an emotionally traumatic thing for a woman to have to keep changing HRT, because we're just messing around with the system when that's already been messed around with. So yeah,
one size doesn't suit all either with HRT and testosterone, which is another topic as well on its own. I just think it's trial and error, and I'm a massive example of that. I think I've been on every single HRT, on every strength of dose, and it's taken me probably the last year to find the right dose for me, and I'm nearly 46. So I definitely think if one doesn't work, try another one. And it's not going to work straight away either. I think you need to leave it at least 3 months and give it a good go, and if that doesn't work, go back, change it to something else. I mean, I've just had a massive issue with testosterone, and I'm still jumbling around with it at the moment. It's still touch and go with the testosterone.
What are you taking?
I'm on Tostran at the moment, but I had although that's been prescribed from my menopause clinic, the instruction was just one pump daily. So before Christmas, I was getting so many side effects. It was unbelievable.
What were your side effects? Do you mind sharing?
No, not at all. It really, really hairy on my upper thigh, front and back, like really hairy. Yeah. And I just thought, whoa, this isn't right. Really greasy hair here, which is, I've never suffered with greasy hair in my life, and it was smelly. And I was getting really irritated very, very quickly, and I was quite angry. I felt like I was getting quite aggressive.
Yes.
And then I took myself off it at Christmas for a month, and within days I was like, wow, I feel me. And then the hair went and I felt me again, but then the aching joints came back, and my brain fog returned, and my severe fatigue returned. So after doing a little bit of research, because I still haven't had my follow-up, I haven't had my next, which is ridiculous. That's my only gripe at the moment with my clinic. I've got no follow-up at the moment. I don't know when that's coming, to see how I'm getting on. So now I'm on a tiny little pump every other day, which was great, absolutely great. No hair, changed where I put it. I put it on the top of my belly, almost where my hysterectomy scar is. Yes, I rub it.
That's what I do.
Yeah, no hair. Fabulous, no greasy hair. Lately I just feel like I'm getting a bit tetchy again, and I don't know what that is. So I'm now thinking maybe I'll do it 3 times a week, and that's it now.
And you know, that's the thing, we become like alchemists. We have to sort of tinker around with things, and I was the same. I came up with the worst acne all around my chin and here. Like I was like, what is that? You know, and so I did the same. I stopped, and you know, whereas you know the clinics will say, well, you need to take it every day, and it's like, no, my body doesn't like it every day. So I take mine just twice a week now, and like you and like you said, I just put it on my cesarean. I put it on my cesarean scar, and it's fine. But any more than that, and I just know, I mean, the thing is, what we must remember is we do make our own testosterone. If we're fairly active and we walk, our body will make some testosterone. It won't make a lot. But, you know, stress is a big thing. And I talk about this a lot in you know, sessions with my clients, that if we're stressed, whatever hormones we might have that our body's making get knocked out, because stress will override that. And so it's really important that clinics, doctors, partners, family members understand that actually, if you're going to do anything, do something to help alleviate our stress. Don't add to our stress, because that is,
and
not helpful.
huge. My other issue is, and when I've discussed this with my consultant when she finally gets in touch, now it says on the label, and it probably will for many ladies, 1 pump. If you pump the testosterone right down, there's a huge amount of testosterone. Obviously, that was too much for me. So by tapping it slightly, that's a tiny amount. That's probably the correct amount for a female for daily, really. But I wasn't told that. I've had to find that out myself.
Trial and error.
Yeah. So that's really incorrect information. She didn't give me any guidance at all of what I should be doing with this male hormone.
Because it is, and that's the thing, just to say to people. So I take Androfem, which I have to pay £80 a tube for.
Yeah, I was on that. I was great on that.
Yeah, and Androfem is from Western Australia, and it's testosterone for women. Tostran is actually testosterone for men, which women are allowed to use, but they haven't adapted the packaging, or it's stronger, and so that's why you were getting all of those side effects. So again, we need to have messaging and leaflets that are reflective of the people that are using the products. Otherwise, we have to become like guinea pigs.
Yeah.
Being tested upon, and so that's not great. So as we sort of bring our interview to a close, I mean, I just could talk to you for absolutely forever, and I'm sure we'll come back and do another one. I mean, this is a time in our lives. I mean, you're in your 40s. I've just nudged the 50. This is a time in our lives where we should be really, you know, celebrating what's coming next. You know, children possibly leaving home, flying the nest and going on to the next chapter of their lives. But I know all too well how stress and anxiety can really cripple women during this time. Is that something you relate to, Natasha, or is that something that you've seen with your friends or experienced yourself? And what do you think we can do about that? Yeah,
I just think it's just trying to find the right path, but it's this whole anxiety thing, isn't it, with menopause and how you feel about yourself. I suffered with anxiety most of my life, so a lot of it is menopause, a lot of it is probably part of me, but yeah, things need to change around that, don't they, really, about how we feel about ourselves? Because as I said to you before, I'm at a crossroads at the moment. I've not worked since we adopted our 2 children, so I've been out of the work scene for a very long time, and I'm completely lost. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what, you know, I don't really know what I'm doing at the moment. I've spent the last couple of weeks dwelling on this as well, thinking, come on, Tash, what are you going to do with your life now? Because obviously they need me, but they don't need me like they did before. I mean, they're out all the time anyway, so my husband's working and it's just me. And I'm like, and I've got too much time now, I think, to analyze it too much. And I think that's no good.
No. So what would you want to do? What would you want to do if you could do anything, you know, without that you know, those insecurities or anxiety creeping in, which we all have, me included? What would you want to go back and do or start?
Yeah, I think whilst I had my 2 lots of surgery, I was a volunteer in the hospital on the gynae ward where I had all my surgery, and I did that for 18 months. Now, I love looking after patients. I just love people. I love it. So I want to do something where it's an interaction whether it's a hospice, or because I looked after an awful lot of cancer patients on the gynecology ward, and I absolutely loved it. So I need to find a direction where I would be caring for someone, or menopause education. I don't know. There's something there I need to fit in somewhere. I definitely won't be doing hairdressing again. No, I don't want to do anything like that, you know.
No, and you know, sometimes life sort of gives us these experiences, and there's you know, there's no doubt about it, the suffering you've experienced, you would have a bucket load of empathy and compassion to take to other people. You know, maybe that is your spiritual path, that actually to be able to use those fantastic skills that you have to actually help other people. And I for one will definitely be encouraging you to do that, because I think you'd be amazing at that, because that's what we all need, don't we? We need someone to hear our story, to really listen to us, not too bothered if they understand it, but just to feel like you've been heard goes a very, very long way, doesn't it, when your hormones are all over the place.
And I met up with some other menopause ladies the other week. I travelled to Surrey, to my hometown. And when we all met up, we've all met on Instagram and we've all chatted for ages, and we finally met up in person, and it was amazing. I mean, I don't really talk about my menopause to my friends. So to be able to sit with these three menovists that I'd been chatting to for months in person, it was like I'd known them all my life, but we just spoke openly about our menopause journeys. It was the best experience I've had in a long time, because I've never done that before. It was amazing.
Yeah, and this is it. This is you emerging. Doing things you've never done before is a great sign that you're ready to embrace what's coming next. So from me to you, I mean, I think this is just such an amazing story, and I think it's one that a lot of people don't understand, and I think you've been fantastic in putting the clarity in on that, you know, demystifying it. And I know the Daisy Network are fantastic in terms of understanding knowledge, resources, you know, further points of contact. They would be a good place to go, wouldn't they?
Absolutely brilliant. They're phenomenal. Yeah.
Okay, and like Natasha says, finding out a menopause clinic, menopause specialist. But ladies, get a mirror, take a look at your bits and bobs, because they are your bits and bobs. And actually, even if your partner notices something doesn't look quite right, let's get over the embarrassment, let's get over the stigma, and let's get the help that we rightly deserve, because that's what Natasha's calling for. She's calling for you to be, you know, looked after. So any last bits of advice for anyone who's watching this, Natasha, from your point of view?
Let's talk about menopause more, and don't be ashamed of if something's not right, because there's so many of us out there that are in the same situation. I just think the more that we keep plugging it, the more menopause will be a normal conversation.
Yeah, you are such a force for good. Thank you so much for giving your time today. And as I say, I'll put your details that neither of us can remember in the comments below, and people can get in touch with you there. But thank you so much, Natasha.
Thank you.